Cyber briefing for Tuesday, the 11th of June. I'm Stephen Ridgway. Netgear has warned that there are flaws in their WNR614 devices, which are popular small routers. It's got half a dozen vulnerabilities, which affect devices. These devices are end of life, and there is no current support from Netgear. They are present, though, remain present in various devices, mostly home users and small businesses, because they were a particularly budget friendly but relatively functional router. If you have got one of these, I would definitely recommend that you check. First of all, if you've got something that's sat on the internet and is end of life. End of life, as we said before, in my mind, is either you can't get the hardware replaced, or even more importantly, nobody's providing security patches for it. If either of those things matter to you, well, in fact, the second one certainly matters. If it blows up, can you replace it? Well, that's a service delivery question. If it's your home router, probably you don't care that much. Although if you've got kids, they'll be screaming at you that the internet's down. But if security patches are not being provided by the manufacturer or vendor, then it should not be in your environment, no matter who you are or where you are. There we are, we've said it. So if you've got one of those, replace it. The vulnerabilities, there's a good write-up in a Bleeping Computer article, which we will link. Take the normal precautions, but vulnerabilities are vulnerabilities. These things are out there. This device is end of life, so you only have yourselves to blame. GitLocker has been abusing GitHub notifications to push malicious OAuth apps. So we've spoken quite a lot over the last few months about software repositories containing things that turn out to be malicious. Well, this I think is a good reminder. If you are using GitHub as a developer, there is a campaign at the moment to send via phishing, which encourages you to click on various links based around spurious recruitment drives. So it's more of the we've got a job scam. Basically, through the usual sort of stuff, they are trying to persuade you to download and use a malicious OAuth app, which, if you do, will do nasty things, as does all malware. If you are being targeted by these emails, do make use of GitHub's abuse reporting tools, because the owners and maintainers of GitHub are trying to stamp out as much of this as they can. And in the meantime, bear in mind, don't click on links or reply to notifications that you get that look like they may well be spurious or dodgy job offers. Don't authorize unknown OAuth apps. They can expose your GitHub account and data to third parties. And periodically review your authorized OAuth apps, which makes a lot of sense. Be aware of that if you're using GitHub as part of your development toolkit. ARM has warned of an actively exploited flaw in the Mali GPU kernel drivers. Okay, the issue is being tracked as CVE 2024-4610. It's a use after free vulnerability, and it impacts all versions of Bifrost and Valhall drivers from R34PO to R40PO. The vulnerability was fixed in R41PO, which was released on November the 24th, 2022. So if you are using older, not really old, but older hardware that may have these GPUs, then you will need to look to your vendor or for a patch or an upgrade. Hopefully, the devices are still in support. Hence the discussion earlier. So just to make it clear, then these GPUs are found in various smartphones and tablets, Chromebooks, embedded systems, and they can also be found in automotive infotainment systems, high-end smart TVs, and so on and so forth. So they're liable to be out there. It may take a little bit of thought to work out whether you do have one of these chips in a device or not. There's no obvious links to look that up, but definitely though, if you've got smart devices of any kind, make sure they're up to date, and if you've got infotainment in your car, I hope you've disabled its access to the internet. Apple is entering the AI arms race. Apple is looking to integrate ChatGPT into iOS and macOS, which is kind of cool. Why am I mentioning this? Well, two reasons. One is it kind of amused me that Elon Musk has totally gone off on one about this, which I think is out of proportion with the actual risk that could be being run in this space. But then he's Elon Musk, so expect weirdness. I think I am hoping that Apple will be spending enough time to put proper controls around this, because as we've seen, AI, it isn't the most secure stuff at the moment. But they're calling it Apple Intelligence, and it's also going to be used to enhance Siri, which, quite frankly, is about time. I mean, if you compared Siri to, say, Alexa, oh, I'm sorry, Siri, but you still have a long way to go. It will be interesting to see where this goes. It is worth bearing in mind that this does potentially mean that there are going to be privacy risks, and it certainly changes the threat landscape for Apple devices when they do this. So keep an eye out for it. If, again, as always, if you're particularly bothered about privacy on your devices, it may well be worth disabling some of these things. And talking of which, Microsoft has modified Recall, the Recall AI feature, after listening to at least some of the concerns coming out of the privacy and security world around what they were trying to do. So the changes they're making are they're reversing the policy of shipping it enabled. It now ships turned off. You need to enroll with Windows Hello in order to enable it, and you will be required to provide proof of presence. Don't quite know how, but maybe the usual stuff. And recall data will be encrypted and only decrypted and accessible once the user authenticates via Windows Hello. Step in the right direction. However, it does still leave the question of, um, is it safe to have that level of data sat even on your local machine? There are reports that in tests you can get it to capture passwords, screenshots with passwords in them, all those sorts of things. It just captures everything that's on your screen whilst you're using your machine. So um, even though that stuff is encrypted, would you particularly want to leave those files um, kicking around on your hard disk? And something which is not commonly talked about these days is potentially one of these sort of lost nuggets of information. Encryption is only as good as the available effort that can be put into breaking it. Do you see, if you see what I mean? So all encryption is breakable one way or another, and we're not talking about vulnerabilities. It's a perfect algorithm. Oh shit, it's got a vulnerability. What we're talking about is if you just literally gather data, if you just brute force endlessly, all encryption is breakable one way or another. Um, the time taken to break in, the time taken to decrypt without the key, needs to be longer than the useful lifetime of the data being protected, which I don't think is a concept that people are thinking about particularly deeply these days. So if you are storing passwords inadvertently because Recall has grabbed them, how long will that password be valid? And how likely would it be that if somebody just stole the encrypted Recall files off your desktop or off your machine, that they could decrypt that and still find the password useful? And that's making an assumption that they haven't got access to this stuff in other ways anyway. So I still think that this has got some particular challenges, and again, it definitely changes the threat landscape of your devices, and I think that's the thing that needs to be thought about. So, do the risk assessment, even if it's your own personal machine. Do the risk assessment. What is likely to be targeted now that wasn't before? Is there anything in there that really matters? And obviously, if privacy matters to you, I would again suggest you turn off these types of things. And then finally, there's an article in Security Affairs. Haven't come across this in the mainstream press, but I'm going to make an assumption that it is true reporting, because it's a good thing, and even if they're making this up, it's still something to think about. But apparently the NHS has called for O-type blood donations following the ransomware attack on London hospitals. So the ransomware on the hospitals, just as a very brief reminder, it was focused on testing services. So pathology and diagnostic services provider was taken offline. I'm guessing then one of the services that Synovis provided was blood type matching. Now, it's interesting. When I was a kid, everybody knew their blood type. I can't remember mine. I can't find it anywhere either. But there was a time when everybody knew their blood type. These days, I think people don't, but that's probably because they can type your blood very quickly, and technology has kind of overtaken the requirement to know whether you need to give blood or not, except under these sort of circumstances. O-type blood, if I remember correctly, and it is a while since O-level biology. O-type blood can be used in transfusions for all other types. So consequently, kind of a universal donor type blood. If you've got one of the other types, some are compatible with others, but if you get it wrong, you get all sorts of nasty reactions. Which, yeah, I don't know whether you would die of it. You might. I'm not sure. However, if you are O-type blood, you've got an O-type blood, then and you are, well, in fact, and certainly if you're living in London or the southeast, but pretty much anywhere else in the UK, do consider donating blood. I know it's kind of fallen out of fashion. My dad used to do it regularly, but that was 30, 40 years ago. Because there used to be blood donor stations on near London Bridge, and he would, on his way home from the city, would go and give blood. Good for him. I think it's less common and people don't talk about it as much. And I know that there is not as much blood donated these days as is often required, because it doesn't have an infinite shelf life. It has to be continually topped up, apparently. I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong with any of this stuff. However, do consider giving blood, because if people are going to die the consequence of a ransomware attack, but we could have done something about it by donating blood, I think we should all feel exceedingly bad about that. So that is enough from me for today. Hope you have a good Tuesday, and I'll